Global Conservation Corps presents the Rhino Man podcast. I'm John Jerko, your host, and one of the directors of Rhino Man the movie. This podcast series is a way for me to interview top conservationists on the topics of rhinos, the poaching crisis, the importance of rangers, and community engagement, all as a way to create awareness around these issues and to promote the coming release of our documentary film. In this episode, I'm talking with my friend Altin Gysman. Altin was born in the Eastern Cape and worked his way up to Lieutenant Colonel in the South African National Defense Force. In 2018, he joined the Southern African Wildlife College as a senior course leader, and now he is the head of Protected Area Integrity Unit, African Field Ranger Training Services. In this chat, we talk about Altin's military background and how that has influenced his current role in training rangers. We dive deep into the many jobs of a ranger, the vast set of skills taught at the Wildlife College, and the role of Project Braveheart. We also dig into what it takes to go through a ranger selection program, similar to the one featured in our film Rhino Man. So let's jump in. Welcome to the show, Altin. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you, John, and it's good to see you again and to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I was there in 2020 for quite a bit of time, and we had some fun with the selection process there. But I think I originally met you in 2018 when we came down for our last shoot for Rhino Man. Back then, Ruben de Kock was running the selection program there, and you were one of the trainers. And I remember, I feel like you really stood out as someone that was able to guide these guys through the process. And I know in the film we've got you in a sleep deprivation running the show there, and I feel like it's one of my favorite scenes in the film. So maybe give a little bit of background about yourself. What were you doing when I first met you in 2018, and where has your journey kind of taken you to your current position?
Okay, John, when you met me, I was a senior course facilitator, and I was also a mentor to the younger guys or the younger instructors. I got into the Wildlife College in 2018, actually January 2018, and I've held that position for approximately 2 years, where I have done some training operations in Mozambique, training field rangers. So I think my initiation was actually starting with training in Mozambique, training Mozambican field rangers at Limpopo National Park. And then I've went on to train some South African field rangers at the Southern African Wildlife College. Then when we met, I was on my progression and movement on to my next post, which was program manager. Mrs. de Kock was the previous program manager of African Field Ranger Training Service at the college. And then I've taken over her role. And then since then, I was working with the late Mr. Andy Davis, which was also instrumental to me getting the position of business unit manager or protected area integrity at Southern African Wildlife College at this current stage. So I'm heading operations, I'm heading boots on the ground operations, I'm heading all training interventions for the college with regards to field rangers. And I'm also heading organizational required courses like leadership, human rights training, and then also working with other NGOs that have an effect on conservation within the space.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you're doing a combination of leading all of these different training courses and services, but also you're developing new ones as well. Is that correct?
That is totally correct, because of my previous experience of 23 years in the military, which was a very, very instrumental thing in letting me to come where I am today in the conservation space in less than 4 years, is that I've used my knowledge and my skills and empowering rangers, because the knowledge and the skills from the military come into practical being, it comes into tactical being, and I can use that experience to maybe save a ranger's life. I can give him some tactical advice, I can give rangers some personal advice, some leadership advice, and for them also to be proficient in their job which they are executing in the parks and the reserves.
Yeah, and I really want to dig into kind of your past and how you've, your military experience and how you kind of came up and then got connected to conservation. But before we dive into that, just more background for people that may not know as much about rangers or what's going on. I've had some other conversations about the poaching crisis and how that's changed things. And a lot of the rangers have to be in a more of a security position to protect these reserves. But can you describe from your point of view what a ranger is and what the importance of a ranger is, and maybe lead into what you guys are doing specifically at the Southern African Wildlife College to get them to that point?
Okay, John, very much important is that we need to understand firstly the roles of the ranger. And the first role that a ranger is a law enforcer. So a ranger needs to protect himself. He needs to protect the biodiversity, any fauna and flora within his environment. And we call it that the ranger is the bulletproof jacket between the poacher and the animal. So the first role is law enforcement. Then the second role of the ranger is an educator. So rangers must go out and educate communities, educate visitors about the biodiversity within the parks and the reserves. So they play a very big educational role. So we just don't train them that they can have the skills and the knowledge, but they must empower others. So I think that is very much important for me as training a ranger. Then the third thing that we are focusing on is that a ranger is a communicator. Rangers must be able to communicate. They must be able to communicate to visitors, tourists, staff within the park. They must be able to communicate with people that is surrounding them. So that is mainly for us the crux of the three roles of the ranger. And then if you look into the anti-poaching crisis that we currently experience, or the poaching crisis that we currently experiencing within South Africa, it can be government reserves or it can be private reserves. The role of the ranger have increased because now the ranger, with his traditional task of checking the fence, monitoring grazing, checking the movement of species within the reserves, they need to focus now on incursions. Incursions by means of following tracks, looking where the poachers are in the reserves, or monitoring where the poachers are in the reserves, and do follow-up operations in a tactical way. But the importance is now we have force multipliers. Force multipliers in a sense of military means now we assisting the rangers with having an eye in the sky, which is our air wing, and then also the K9 unit, our very proficient K9 unit, which doing the follow-up operations on the ground. So we have a combination of operations that we are carrying on. So we are extending the role of the rangers in terms of K9 as well as air wing capabilities. So currently we are doing the best that we can as rangers on the ground, but there will be improvement in the future with regards to the poaching that is currently taking place.
Yeah, so it's a wide range of skills that these rangers have to have, which is pretty impressive. I think a lot of people, especially if you haven't visited South Africa or African reserves, and even if you have, you might not realize that there's these guys, men and women, out in the field that are doing this duty of protecting the reserves. Because most of the time when they're on the job, they're kind of in the bush and blend in and try to not be seen. But I really like how you guys at the college are pushing that side of teaching them to be educators, because I feel like they're in such a great position to connect with communities and possibly youth growing up and be an inspiration and also educate. So maybe just talk a little bit more about that side of it. And I don't know if you know the history of how that came up. Has it always been like that at the college, or is this something that's been brought in more recently as an aspect of what it means to be a ranger?
John, I think it was always within the college because if you know when you were here in South Africa and we had some other interviews with you, we spoke about the 40th approach of the college. So the 40th approach is boots on the ground, which is field ranger training. Then we have the K9, which is follow-up operations. Then we have the eye in the sky, which is the air wing. And then we have a very, very good community development efforts also in the college. So community was always part and parcel of the college. And if you can also look into my department educating rangers, giving bursaries to rangers from the community, which means I'm having an impact in the community. Although I am not creating a job for them, I'm at least giving them the opportunity to be educated in being a field ranger and to give them more opportunities to enable them to get a job in maybe any reserve, private or government reserve. So we do have a very, very good impact in the communities. And we always say to the students or to the candidates when they come to us do training that they must make sure that they are protesting it in the schools, that they are protesting it in the universities, that they must speak about conservation, they must speak about poaching. And I think if we have this educational role in the communities, then we will always be successful. Just recently with GCC, I've sent out one of my rangers, Gert Dibakoane, and I think you know Gert.
Yeah, I know Gert very
Gert
well.
went to the schools with the GCC team, speaking more about the role of rangers. So we are also doing that marketing strategies where we encourage young people to join us and do the training.
Yeah, I've always just loved the way you guys approach it, and maybe for people that don't know as well, I feel like this is a pretty international crowd. Why is it important to engage these communities and to educate and offer training and support and things like that?
I think the importance is the educational role, but that they can understand that everything that we have in the parks and reserves belong to all of us, and that we must conserve, we must preserve, so that our children and their children can be able to see the natural heritage and everything that we have in the parks and reserves. So our training actually is futuristic. We think about the future, because if everything goes into extinction, then our families and their families will not be able to see what is going on. And then I've also seen this as economic value, because if we do not have animals, fauna and flora within the parks and reserves, then our economy, specifically in the tourism environment, will be highly effective. So there is also a monetary value coupled to it, so it can also work for the GDP of the country.
I want to dig into some of the specifics of the training you guys do, but maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of go back into your beginnings. Can you talk about when you were young? Was it conservation first? Was it being a soldier first? How did you get involved in the military? Maybe give us some background on where you came from and how you started making this journey.
John, I think growing up, my dream was always to become a policeman. So it means there was some law enforcement in it. Unfortunately, I end up in a career in the military, which was a very, very good career part for me, because it was still law enforcement. I've really started to enjoy it. I've worked myself up into the ranks. I've started from the bottom. My leaders have seen potential in me. And I think, if I can say, by the grace of the Almighty, I've made it for 23 years. I had some very, very good operations also in the military. I had some African Union operations. I had some United Nations operations, peace building, peace enforcement. I had some peacekeeping operations. So they have given me a very good foundation of working with people, working with military forces in peacetime as well as in conflict times. And then shifting to the conservation environment, it was a total different ballgame, because operating in the military is not the same in operating in the conservation space. The ways of how people doing things is totally different. So I needed to adapt totally with the environment. But I think after 4 years, I've learned a lot, because when you enter a new domain or a new career, you must be willing to learn. So willingness was maybe one of my characters that I had to use to learn about conservation. And then I have started with basic training, as can tell you, I was a lieutenant colonel within the military. And then when I've come to conservation, I had to operate like a lieutenant again, going down in the field, being with my troops in the military, being with my students in the Big Five area, doing the physical operations with them. I myself have done the field ranger course to get experience in what is it on the ground that the rangers are experiencing. So I just didn't take my military experience and say I know it all. I had to learn, and then I had some people which were instrumental to my growth within this in the space. It was people that I can say is Mr. Ruben de Kok, which you have mentioned, excellent McCabe, which was a ranger there. I had some few training interventions with him. I've learned a lot from him, and maybe another guy which was Ruan de Vlammer. He was also instrumental because he was a guy that knows about conservation. I was one that knows about military. So we had a combination of the two skills. And I think that first year was very, very good learning experience. And then I've also learned to educate myself whilst I'm working in the space because I'm working at a training institution, which is also educational institution. And I had to do some studies to enable myself to when people speak conservation, I can also speak with them conservation.
How old were you when you made this transition to the wildlife college and conservation? Because it is, I feel like it's tough for a lot of people. You know, you have all this military experience, you've kind of worked your way up to this certain point, and then, like you said, you made the effort to kind of step back and work your way back through so that way you were able to communicate to the students on a better level. I feel like it's always better as a leader to be able to have the experience that the people that you're teaching go through. But it's, you know, a lot of people probably are at that point and are like, no, I can't go back and like be with the students, you know, have that negative attitude. But what was it in you that allowed you to make that decision to kind of take a step back so that you can lead from a better position?
John, as a leader, I always think about the word humility because humility teaches you to take a step back to learn and to learn. My willingness to learn was, as I've said, Ruan, excellent, and everybody that played an instrumental role in my growing up at the conservation space. And then with regards to not knowing it all, because you know that we get individuals that they are just the person that know everything. And in this industry, you need to listen to other people because remember, here in our environment is not only poachers, but it's also the animals that is having a threat in the environment. So if you know it all and you are in trouble one day, you will feel it. And that is my point of view. So I go about by that thing as a leader to say, if you have humility in you and you are willing to work with other people, and then you can be successful in any work that you want to do.
Do you think that's something that you often have to walk people through as they're becoming rangers or going through this training? Because I feel like there's the tendency sometimes, and maybe I've seen this a little bit through the couple of selections I've witnessed, but you know, you get through that selection, you do your first 6 weeks of training, and then you kind of want to just be out there in the field as a ranger doing everything. And it's a little tough to step back and maybe take a job that's more of like watching the fence or, you know, something that's not as active as being a ranger. So what do you see? Do you see that very often? And how do you kind of walk young students and rangers through the process of, you know, having some humility and, hey, you might not know everything yet, just take your time and kind of grow through this process?
John, you let me think what I'm always telling them when I'm giving them class. I always say to them, just be yourself. Don't be an actor because when you're an actor, you will make a mistake. And although you can correct it when you make films and things and edit it, but when you are in a working environment, just be yourself and take it through that. So I think from my point of view, I am seeing myself also as a person that is mentoring younger people, or actually I must say interested younger people because you have people that don't want to get mentored. So my advice that I'm always giving to the young rangers is go out there, be yourself, and make a difference. because I think the main reason for us or doing field ranger training at the Southern African Wildlife College is to make a difference within the conservation space. If I can also mention, there is a lot of interaction with myself and some doctors and professors in the science departments within the Southern African Wildlife College. And one thing during discussions with them comes up always that it's not only law enforcement. There is a wide range that we need to take into consideration. You need to take note of biodiversity. You need to take note about ecology. It's not just about the rhino. It's about the antelope. It's about the impala that is walking there. It's about the types of species of plants, the types of species of animals. So for me, having to learn all of these things, it just gives me more perspective of in what industry I am.
Yeah, and it was very cool seeing these students in the. I've seen the 6 week basic training, and you get to see them learn how to do transects, which is kind of marching out and counting plant species or animals and things like that, and identifying trees. And yeah, it's definitely much more than just the law enforcement side, which is important, but to really connect them to the environment that they're protecting, I think is pretty unique and special. Before we get into that even more, going back to your military experience, are there any stories that you can kind of tell that shaped you and kind of who you became as a leader, as a soldier, as a teacher at the Wildlife College for Rangers? Are there any moments in your military career that stand out that you could share with us?
Okay, John, I think the military have given me the lesson of endurance. You were part of a few selections with us, and you know that if you doesn't have endurance, if you have a tendency to give up, you might not achieve your goals to be successful. Highlights in my career was some military deployments. I think the main highlight for me was being the force intervention battalion commander in the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I was deployed with my forces for one whole year. I see that as a very, very big highlight in my career. It was 2013, 2014. And then it was also a first for South Africa being part of intervention battalion.
What were you guys intervening in? Can you go into some detail?
Okay, there were conflict between rebel groupings and the government of the DRC. So the United Nations have deployed us there as an intervention force to ensure stability and peace within the DRC. So we were highly successful for the year of deployments, and we did reach our mission. Although there is still some conflict in the area, but with that thing that I see as a highlight, I think we've made a difference.
Yeah, and I mean that seems like a pretty big deployment, and you were basically leading that from the South African side.
Yes, it was indeed a very, very big deployment because there was other forces. There was Tanzanian forces, there was Malawian forces, and then the wider United Nations deployments that was around us. But we were the Force Intervention Brigade that was deployed for the first time in a United Nations operation from Africa in this role.
That's pretty special, yeah. Were you guys near Garamba National Park, or did you guys defend any of those areas from rebel attacks?
We were close to the Virunga, close to Nyiragongo and that thing. So we were in the Goma area there in the DRC.
I can only imagine what that type of experience could do in terms of your fortitude, like you said, endurance. I mean, that's a huge thing with any career or project that you have. I mean, I feel like I've learned that just in filmmaking. I mean, you need a lot of endurance and perseverance to stick it out and get to the end because it always takes more than you think going in. Going back to the training, could you give us, you kind of gave us a little bit of an overview earlier, but what are some of the specific courses or things that students are learning and or opportunities to grow? Because I know you guys have a lot of advanced training as well. Can you go through some of that?
Okay. If I can start with our 6 or 5 week basic field ranger training. So we have an armed course and we have an unarmed course. I will describe the armed course because you just take the weapons away, 1 week weapons away, and then you have an unarmed course. So on our course, we focus on financial management, which when the young rangers get into the industry, they know how to work with their finances. Then secondly, we work on their personal hygiene. So we need to ensure that they know how to keep clean when they go out to the bush, because you know that we have maybe 7 days operations, 3 days operations, and it can maybe go further than that. So we need to teach them some hygiene skills. And then we focus on their interaction with society in conservation. So there we speak more about NGOs, speak more about global warming. So we give them some input with regards to conservation. And then we carry on with them to teach them conservation guardianship. Now, conservation guardianship is the hardcore of our course, because that is what they will actually do in the field. And as you have already said, transects, patrols, layaways. We teach them how they do crime scene management, court cases, and all of arrest. So all of the things that will assist them when they physically do their job as rangers within the field. And then we do some orientation, map reading, and navigation, because they must be able to find their way within the field. Then we go with them on a 5-day or 6-day excursion in the Big Five area. That is now where they are outside with all the animals and everything. So this is hardcore. This is the real stuff. So then we teach them identifying and monitoring of wildlife. There we concentrate grass, trees, birds, and the mammals in the area, reptiles and everything within the area for them to know and identify. So we have that week of practical phase, and then we come back, we finalize the portfolio of evidence, we do summative exams, and then we have a very nice parade at the end. And that parade is where we instill pride in them. Now, when a ranger finishes his 6 weeks or his 5 weeks, then I know for sure that he can go out and he can make a difference. But now we extend our role more, or our duties more, as a education institution or as a field ranger institution, where they come back for 2 weeks, then we do advanced field ranger. So there is an extension of their skills. There we move more in tactical skills, shooting skills. So we really expand on that one. And then we have patrol leaders. Now you identify leaders within your environment, and you teach them more on how to give orders and instructions, how to do planning for operations, how to do kit inspections, how to do radio communications, how to work with the higher headquarters and things. So there you go more into the leadership. Then we do protected area security operations planning. With that one, we focus on leaders and managers, because there they need to do planning about operations, they need to do planning about logistics, they need to do planning about administration, they need to do planning about financial management within the reserve. They must be able to do a management plan for the reserve. They must be able to do standing operating procedures for the reserve. So there we extend the leadership role for them to enable them to give them a reserve as a manager, and then they will be able to operate. But we also develop organizational required courses. As I've said to you, Braveheart leadership. I must speak about Braveheart because it's a very, very, very good product that was developed by the college. And there was a few role players with the Braveheart, Mr. Ashwa Gleason and Di Gibson, and we had Anel Rautenbach, we had Naomi Haupt that were also helping us with the editing. And then the instrumental person with this was General Johan Jooste. The program was funded by WWF South Africa, CATA, with US aid funding. So we have really gone out and developed a very good product for ranger leaders. And just in a nutshell, we cover leadership in chapter 1 or module 1. We cover law enforcement ethics module 2, conservation ethics, module 3, because all rangers must have an ethical behavior. So ethics play a very important role. We cover community engagement. Our role have expanded into communities, so we need to make sure that there is some community engagement and interaction with communities, how to understand communities. We covered communication methods. People must be able to know how to negotiate, how to do decision making, how to do conflict resolution. And then we do some little bit of advanced technology where they must take note of technology that they are using in the field, and then they must also take note of modern technology that will be there for them in the future. And then last but not least, we focus on combating corruption, because we do not want our rangers to be involved in corruption. So that is one of our most important things that we handle on that Braveheart course. It is a 3-week course. It's a very hectic course because there's less sleep for the students, lots of information, good assimilation, and the student can go back to the parks or in the reserves and go and make a difference.
Maybe speak more to the corruption side, because we very lightly touch it in our film, but I think it's definitely important, and it's definitely a part of the problem right now. What are you guys doing specifically in that course, but also on a more broad scale? What is the issue with corruption, and how can we try to stop it?
Okay, John, from my side is we first give them the information on how to identify corruption, because anyone can say corruption, but they might not have the facts. So they must first identify a corrupt activity, and then we give them some information about how corruption can impact them, how corruption can impact their work environment, how corruption can impact South Africa as a whole, and how corruption can impact the organization. Because remember, all rangers work for organizations. Then we give them the necessary tools and skills to avoid being involved in corrupt activities. We go into case studies with them. We speak about cases where people were involved in corruption, where people were punished by the courts. We also speak about legislation with regards to corruption, because for them to have an understanding of corruption, they need to understand legislation. And then at the end, we just ask them as rangers not to become involved in corruption. Remember, everyone is responsible for their own actions. But for us to be a professional ranger association or being a professional ranger career, we do not want our rangers to be involved in any corrupt activity, because it can damage our name. And that is in a nutshell what corruption means for us.
Are you able to talk at all about the tools that you're giving these rangers, how they identify corruption? I mean, does it often start out as something that might seem small and then kind of develop into more, or how are you trying to guide them to identify these types of situations with other people?
For us is first, you must observe your environment. You must observe your peers. It's not that everyone must be suspicious of everyone, but you must see. You know that you are not well paid, and all of a sudden you are driving this type of car, this type of house, and so forth and so forth. A big thing with us in the Ranger Corps is integrity testing. So integrity testing also build up when we teach these leaders to say, one of the focus points of knowing that your rangers is not involved in corrupt activities is to do integrity testing with them. So that is one of the main tools which we give them to look at. And then sudden behavior changes of the rangers, sudden interaction with people that that was involved in wildlife crime and things. So this is all the things that you need to observe. And then the importance of the reporting of the corrupt activities. It's sometimes difficult for individuals to report corrupt activities due to victimization and all of that. But we try to tell them, when you see corrupt activities happening in your environment, report it. Because if he doesn't report it, you can be as much as guilty as that person that have transgressed. So this is the type of things that we tell the students, or the tools we give them to observe within the parks and reserves.
Can you talk a little bit about the integrity tests for people that don't know what those are? I mean, it's kind of a lie detector test in a way, but I don't know if you have any more specifics on that or what the reasoning behind using it is.
For me, or my view on integrity testing, is to see if the ranger or the individual was not involved in previous corrupt activities, because there's certain questions that is asked in that line, to see if the individuals was not involved in rhino poaching, to see if individuals did not have any interaction, to see if individuals have lied before, or to hear some inputs on how he's seeing life. So there's only yes or no questions, but that yes or no questions will determine if you pass or if you fail the integrity or lie detection test.
Yeah, and they're hooking up a bunch of different biometrics, right? Like, you know, blood pressure, heartbeat, and all
Yes,
those types of things to kind of measure your emotional reaction to those questions.
yes. They have a polygraph officer, and he come in with all his gadgets, and he's doing the polygraph or the lie detection test or integrity test.
Back to Braveheart a little more. Who is eligible for this course? And it sounds like it's something that's a little more advanced once you've become a ranger and spent some time learning and being out in the field. But I guess who's eligible and what's you kind of talked about all the different parts of it, but at the heart of it, what do you think makes it unique and special as a program?
What makes it special is that you get senior rangers that doesn't have the tools. I always say, I have that saying to them, is I can equip you with knowledge and I've put it in your pocket. So when you are confronted with certain situations, just take out what I learned you and bring it forth, and then you can solve that situations. My focus is senior rangers, because we want people now that have showed some leadership skills and they know that they can progress to the next step. Willing and able field rangers that have a simulation for learning new things, going out there and be able to lead other people. So actually, that is our main criteria for the Braveheart Ranger leadership. When I do this course, and I had a very good instructor, Mr. Monet Jewel, that was also a captain from the military, that have joined us recently to present Braveheart Ranger leadership. Is our motto is that when a student join us on that course, they must give us their mind and their heart. We do not speak technical, we speak with the mind and the heart. And then they must go to the workplace and they must enhance the skill in how they behave and how they make decisions and how they work with their colleagues.
Do you also see it as a pathway for career growth for Rangers as well? Because I feel like there is a tendency, maybe in some reserves or just some mindsets where you become a Ranger and then it's kind of a dead end job. But I feel like maybe Project Braveheart's a way for career advancement to become more of a leader and then maybe move on from there as the head of security or something like that. I don't know if that's part of the reasoning behind it as well.
Yes, it is part of the reasoning, although Braveheart is not yet a requirement for career paths from both private and government reserves. But Braveheart is a very good program to train prospective leaders, to enable them to progress in their career. We are maybe still waiting for decisions to be made from private and government sectors to use a career path for field rangers. I think they are busy developing that structure. So we will see in the future. It's a very good tool. It's a very good course for them to use it in the future for career development.
What do you see for the future of Rangers as like looking out? I mean, you're developing and getting Project Braveheart out there, and this poaching crisis is always kind of evolving over time. But what are you looking into the future, thinking about Rangers? What do you see their role as in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
I see the role of rangers expanding. I see more rangers being trained within this environment because as the economy grow, the more the parks and the reserve grow. So more people go into private reserves, so they need more rangers and things. One specific thing also of this industry is that we are slowly moving very closer to the private security industry also, to have a combination between what we are doing for the government and what we are doing for the private security industry. So we are very slowly but surely moving together in trying to get an apex and move into the same direction.
For people that might be interested in the training side, can you talk about what it's like to be a trainer? Because I imagine maybe some of these rangers, select few eventually get trained to become trainers and go into that role. What's that role like? What do you have to do or be to become a ranger trainer?
For us, you must be a facilitator and an assessor as the requirement on the educational side. For me, you must be firm and fair. You must be able to lead people. You must be able to guide and direct people. You must be able to be a mother and a father to the students on the ground. You must be open minded, but you must be hard and tough. And that is how I want my instructors to be. I say firm and fair, but I also say hard and tough, because you are the one as an instructor that is going to determine if that field ranger goes into the field and he encounter a poacher, what his action will be, and if he will come alive out of that situation.
Yeah, because it's life or death when it comes to those types of incidents, and you can't be wishy-washy about what you're supposed to do and how you do it, right?
That's true, because I think you saw me in Rhino Man, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the selection process, maybe you can even talk to that some too. It's really where these young candidates that, aren't even technically students yet, they're trying to become students going through this process, but it's their first time interacting with these trainers. So, I think especially at the beginning, there's kind of this more, maybe it's depersonalized a little bit, just to put a little bit of fear into them and like, this is strict, this is how it's going to be. But maybe you could talk to that experience as a trainer when you first see these kids getting off the bus. Like, what's your theory behind how you approach working with them? Because I think for some outsiders too, maybe it looks like this is too harsh, you're yelling too much, some of the negative side of it. But I think if you watch the evolution of these candidates as they go through, you see the reasoning behind it. But let me kind of give it to you. What's your thoughts on that from a trainer's perspective?
John, you know that when we train field rangers, specifically when we put them through a selection, we want the best of the best. And we go in there with a total paramilitary approach, which is the approach for discipline, which is the approach for esprit de corps, which is the approach for uniformity and things. And if we do not start it on a strict way, we will not end it on a strict way. So you know that there will be 40 people that will come for the selection and the client want 10. So we need to do it in a very good professional way that we can get our totals that we want to train. In some instances, we have 150 people and we only need to select 20 of them to train. So we need to be constructive in what we are doing. We need to know exactly what we are doing, and we need to be totally successful. So the paramilitary discipline thing will never go away. We will keep it like that, because if we start from the start, and you will see, sometimes I meet some of the candidates in town, and then they say, "Hi, sir, when can I come back? Because I failed the selection." But I am now ready, because people come to our selections unfit. People come not being aware of their surroundings. People come with an incorrect mindset. People come with the incorrect clothing to come and do the course. People come just for curiosity to the selection because they are interested in doing something. But the 20 or the 10 or the 5 that you will get out of the selection is the people that's heart is there, because for us, physical and mental toughness and endurance is the one that we need for our field rangers. And with you being part of a selection, following a selection, you know how it goes. First 2 days, we are very, very, very tough on them. The third day, we still carrying on, but there's a slowdown in the process because now you have broken them down totally. And now you must now look into their leadership, their teamwork, how they can operate, their endurance, their courage, their willingness. So now from day 3 up till day 4, the 2 days, you evaluate that. Day 5, when we go into the Kesave, it's now where you test total strength and endurance. So that is in broad the layout. And some guys only do the first run in day 1 and they quit. Guys and ladies, and I must commend ladies which endure up to the end. You have seen it in some of our selection. There is ladies that might not be very physically fit, but they have the right mindset. So mentally and everything, they are very, very strong, and we put them through to the course. So sometimes people think if I have lots of muscles and things, I can be a field ranger, but that is not everything that we are testing. I don't know if I've answered this one proper.
No, that was good. You covered a lot, and I definitely have witnessed a couple of those guys that come in with the big muscles, and then, they might not have the heart or the passion for it, and quickly find out that there's a difference between, giant muscle strength and the type of endurance you have to go through, and maybe you could go through some of the, you don't have to do every detail of it, but some of what these students have to go through in a selection. I know there's sleep deprivation, which doesn't matter how strong you are, that's gonna to mess with you emotionally, and a lot of endurance type exercises and the teamwork. And maybe you could talk about Kazavak. Just go through some of the types of physical and mental challenges that they have to overcome.
We very much focus on stamina exercises. Stamina exercises is now where they do 10-kilometer walk every day, 8-kilometer run. Then we focus on strength exercises where we do push-ups, sit-ups, we do burpees with them, we do pull-ups, and then we focus now on proper things like endurance. The sleep deprivation is something that we test for them when they go out into the field. During the night, we wake them up every second hour to see if they can adapt with situations, because here we work with orders and instructions within our industry. So anytime there can be an incident and they must be ready for it. So some students might think, no, we just want to punish them, but it's not punishment. That waking up of them every second hour is actually testing them. If they do a night operation, how will they react if they must move from place to place? So the sleep depth is definitely something. In the sleep depth, we test the following. We test if you can come with the right equipment at the right place at the right time. So it's a whistle, 10 counts, and everybody must be there. Then we check their equipment. Equipment must be fully prepared. There must be water bottle. Their rifle must be next to them. Their big pack must be packed. They cannot come barefoot. They must have their boots on, and they must be ready to move forward to another direction. Then we test some camaraderie. We test how they work together as a team by singing. We also test them, or not test them, we give them some information during the sleep depth of what it entails to be a field ranger, what is the hardships of field rangers, what is the nice time of field rangers. So sleep depth can take from 20 minutes to an hour to 2 hours. We let them go and sleep for 5 minutes, and then we wake them up again.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you briefly, but that's one of the things I liked so much about the way you handled sleep depth is you kind of just said it, but it's grueling, they're tired, it's tough, but you're also giving them the why behind it and filling them in on, this is the reason we're doing this. These are the types of things you're going to encounter potentially when you're out there as a ranger, and it gives context to it so they don't feel like they're just being brutalized for no reason. There's more than just testing their mental and physical stamina. It's also educating them on the reasoning behind it. So just wanted to chime in and say that, but you can keep going.
Okay, that is fine. And then on the last day, we have a 17-kilometer walk. And that is our Kesavek. We call it Kesavek. We walk 12 kilometers. And then on the last 5 kilometers, we divide them into groups. And then they use now their mental strength, because at that stage, everyone is tired. Everyone just want to finish the Kesavek or the exercise, and we let them build something. I'm not going to say what they are building, because I want still future people to come to me and to do the Kesavek without knowing what the surprise is. So we call it as a prize. And during the last 5 kilometers, now we test endurance, stamina, leadership. We can identify with the Kesavek our leaders. We can see who is lacking behind, who doesn't have the will to finish, who is not going to make it into the future. Then we will, at the end, then after the Kesavek, which for the 5 kilometers, 3 hours, which some doesn't make it sometimes, we will then have an interview. And then the interview, very grueling, where we now really ask some hardcore questions to see if it is the right candidate for the job. Then have our final candidates, and if the client is happy, they will accept the candidates, and we take them then through the 6-week course.
What's your favorite part about the training, maybe even selection in particular, just in terms of watching these young candidates come in and the transformation they make? Can you talk about what's your favorite part of the job?
Currently, my favorite part of the job is when I see the difference that we are making with this young ones. There's old ones also that is coming to the course. But my best thing that I can tell you is after every parade or during every parade, when you see the transformation from a student that doesn't know any way how to drill in a paramilitary way, and when they are on that parade, everything is perfect, everything is uniform, there is comradeship, the guys do everything together, the drill instructors, the facilitators, which I have, can commend my facilitators. I have very good and professional facilitators within my environment, and they know their job, they know what they need to speak. They are also the mentors and the coaches for the students on the ground. But I think my satisfaction is when I see how the students have grown from day one up to the last day when we do the parade. And it really gives you that thing and say, yes, we are here for the right cause. We are here to make a difference.
Do you ever have any of the students come up to you afterwards and say thank you or tell you anything?
They always stay in touch with us. We have WhatsApp groups that we establish when they are here, and they always contact us and say thank you for what you have done. Thank you for the instructors' willingness to teach us. Sometimes we thought that it's too hard, but now we can see, whilst we are working in the field, we reap the benefits. We can see that they didn't do it for nothing.
What advice do you give to someone that's considering going to one of these selections and maybe becoming a ranger? What would you tell someone young in the communities?
Practice before you come here. Be mentally fit, because the running, the push-ups, the pull-ups is nothing, but you must be strong here. You must say to yourself, I'm going to make it, and I will make it. So if you are not strong here, you will only last not even a full day, and then you will go home. So what I can tell them is be mentally strong if you come here.
Is there anything else you want to add, Alton? I feel like this has been a great conversation and you've covered so much ground around what it means to be a ranger and the type of training you guys do. But is there anything else you'd like to add?
John, from my side is I must just say thank you to you guys that always invite the Southern African Wildlife College for such opportunities. I have worked with you just when lockdown started in South Africa. We have opened lockdown with the first course. with you guys. And I just want to say, keep up the good work which you guys are also doing, GCC and the other people like Nkombe Rhino are doing in the environment. And let us train more field rangers. Let us get more funding and train more field rangers and make a bigger difference within in the space.
I really appreciate that, Alton. And yeah, thank you as well and your team because, like you said, this was a whole other project that were doing, but we came down there during the lockdown and the pandemic, and you guys were willing to figure out a way to make a selection happen right as all this craziness was going on, and it was it was pretty wild experience, but we made it through the selection, and no one ended up with COVID, which was pretty crazy at the time.
Yeah.
And you guys did such a great job at facilitating all that. So yeah, I just want to tell you thank you as well.
No, no, no. Thank you, John. And we must keep the conversation open. We must keep on making a difference.
For sure. All right, Elton. Yeah, hopefully I'll get down there to South Africa again soon and be able to say hello in person. But thanks so much for this.
Thank you, John, and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Rhino Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you're excited to see the film succeed, please subscribe and review our podcast on Spotify and iTunes. Then follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rhino Man the Movie. More details about Rhino Man, the social impact campaign, and future screenings are at rhinomanthemovie.org. To learn more about the Global Conservation Corps and their work, visit globalconservationcorps.org. Sign up for the newsletter and follow GCC on all of the social platforms. If you like this podcast, make sure to subscribe and catch up on GCC's Voices of Nature podcast, where Bob Ludke interviews a wide range of people who have dedicated their lives to making a difference in conservation. A special thanks goes out to Simone Wilson for the music for this podcast. He's the brilliant composer for Rhino Man the Movie. Learn more about his work at simonewilsonmusic.com. Until next time, I'm John Jerko, and this is the Rhino Man Podcast.